Hello to anybody and everybody coming to check out this video. If you read the title, you might have an idea about where this is going, but just in case you don't, allow me to explain. I am going to be reading and kind of discussing the first 5 chapters of this manga known as Ichi the Witch because I genuinely just think it's a fun and wonderfully written one. I think it's going to have a lot of greatness and a lot of cool stuff that they get around to, and the potential for it is just high in my eyes. So I think it'll be fun to talk about. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. Starts off with you getting to read someone saying, I'm thankful the birds, the insects and fungi, the animals, for the fruits and the plants. And it shows some pictures of these. I'm thankful for all the life in this world. Then it shows what appears to be a young Adel Salam. I would say a young male. And then the next page is the title portion. And it shows him saying, I want to hunt them all. Oh boy, I want to hunt. I want to hunt them all. And it gives a little Ichi the Witch, pretty good first story little panel and title for the thing. I like it. Next page goes on to show what is called Druid Mountain, the flower field near its summit, and a giant looking moose. Like this thing just looks pretty majestic and powerful. Look how strong he looks. Drawn really well. He's walking around, going through the field, maybe eating some of the or I don't know if he's eating the flowers, but he is within that flower field. But suddenly it shows him looking down, and boom, a nightmare scene. You get to see Ichi pretty much assaulting it with that knife. But in his eyes, all he got to see was Ichi staring at it, and it was probably a little too late. Then it goes to show that he's at the village at the foot of the mountain, and some people are like really surprised, but saying, "Oh, he finally did it!" So that's the Flowerfield Guardian. It's huge. We can cross the mountain safely again, and they're thankful to this young man. He's just like, "Yeah, no problem. It was fun." And then he goes to say, "I thought it was totally worth it." Laying there for about 6 hours. Goes on to talk to some more villagers, but they happen to be leaving, so he's like running to catch up to them, and he's wishing them luck and some good fortune on their travels, and he gives them a gift. It's some rabbit jerky, or rabbit meat and jerky, not rabbit jerky. And then she's like, "Hey man, why don't you just stay in the village? Are you always gonna live up on the mountain?" And he is perfectly content with it. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna stay there. One, there's still things I want to do there, but it's just my home." He enjoys the mountain ever since he was placed there, and then you get to find some of his backstory, which is he was dropped there when he was 6 years old and left with a knife. Struggled to figure it out and survive, and just trying to make it through the days. And as he was about to die, he was about to get attacked by a wolf, and then he had a kind of realization. Well, no, he had a realization that the knife he had been given was pretty much for him to take his own life. But then he had an even more interesting realization as this wolf was coming to attack and eat him. That he wanted to live, and he really wanted to stay alive. So upon him managing to kill that thing, the wolf that was going to attack him, and clinging to life, it gave him a new little lease and a new look on the world. He learned how to fish. He was being more grateful for life. Learned how to forage for edible plants. He did all this on his own apparently. So good luck on him. And he didn't need anything terrible. But then he developed a different type of mindset, and he learned to hunt. He learned to trade and barter and get tools, as you can see. But what's most interesting is this right here, his death for death. Typically he wants to hunt things that are trying to kill or kill humans and or him. And this is the biggest piece of his mindset that is important to his character that we learn in the beginning. And then he goes through and says that the villagers are kind to him, and he technically is happy, but he likes his vagrant lifestyle, and he likes being out on the mountain, and there's still something he wants to do. And then it goes on to showing that there was something in the mountain that was large, massive, strange looking creature. It slept soundly, and and it used a massive tree for its pillow. he was like, yeah, this thing is strong. He could tell. He just knew, and it definitely wouldn't have any problems killing humans. But he still had no reason to hunt it because it hadn't done anything to him yet, and it hadn't tried to kill him yet. And this was just his guess that it would more than likely kill humans. But if the thing ever faced him with the intent to kill, then he would desire to kill it. But should it not, then he has no desire to kill it. However, he's hoping it does because he really wants to hunt it. Like, look at that face. Then he pans back to that creature, assumedly another time. And it is just looking massive. Like, it's pretty much almost near the tops of those trees. And it happens to be speaking now. It's saying something that something's finally here. We don't know what, but it's been discussing it. And then we get this that they said it's an emergency magic warning. Now we still don't know what the magics are, but we can assume it's that creature. And then we get to hear that these girls, it was the girls who were leaving the village, are all excited, and they are excited, and then we get to find out why, because the witches are going to be here. Then you get to see Descaris, the Abyssal Witch. She's got a cool title. She looks pretty cool. Everything apart from her hat. Her hat drip is pretty weak, but her outfit, I dig it. I fuck with it. So she's going forward, and she tells the other people to just focus on guarding the normies, as she says, and then the mirror is like, hey, what about reinforcements? But she's like, they'll only be in the way. The Scaris is pretty wily looking. Then you get to see another witch named Monegold, the Orate Witch. Ooh, so she's giving orders to the other witches and telling them to erect a barrier. Then it goes into an explanation about magic and what the magic is. So it begins to describe that magic in the world is alive, and those living magics are called magics. Now, apparently they first contacted humanity a long ago and began giving them trials, as evident as seen here. This is a water magic, and the trial to drink is to drink every last drop of water. Should you pass, you get taught the spell of controlling water. And after that, the bonfire magic, after that, the iceberg magic, the breeze magic, they all had their own unique trials. But should the ladies who they were presented to pass them, they acquired the magic itself and were granted the ability to utilize the magic. Now, the magics with a J are a bit different from just the magic, Magic, as most people in our world know how to spell it. The magics come as a set type of ability or bolstering from what it seems, but more on that in a little bit. So then anyone who acquired the magic could become known as a witch. Now, there you can also just learn magic to become a witch, but acquiring a magic is guaranteed that you are called the witch, apparently. So it cuts back to Descaris and shows her about to engage with that beast, and it's, he's looking pretty great, but then he also reveals himself that he is King Uro, the King Magic. So apparently he's pretty great. But each magic has its own personality, and each magic has its own trial. So depending on if it wants to be copacetic or not, really changes things up. This magic definitely seems like he had no plans of that. He was just, I am boss. And then you get to see a giant footprint of something being stomped out. It looks like a whole forest was just stomped, and it's talked about how he doesn't allow anybody to acquire them. He's leveled mountains, he drinks rivers dry, he took countless lives for no reason. Ooh, which is interesting. It's in the black. And then it goes to say he was a magic who hated humanity, which is something important to remember. He continues forward, and it goes to showing a little more conversation with the witch, but then she begins to fight and uses a simple seeming spell, it seems. The fight begins, and it's a whole lot's going on. She keeps trying. she keeps trying to pass his trial. His trial is to break his heart, is what he spoke earlier, but then he reveals a little secret that no lady or no woman can scratch my heart. So he's basically a giant cheater because all the witches are female, which is why he can't be acquired. And and you have to follow the rules of the trial, otherwise, you can't. But then we see our main character, Mr. Ichi the Hunter, and he's standing there with a knife, and he's looking almost exhilarated. But then he goes and says, "I'm a man," and the King Uro is real confused. But then he says it with his full chest. He said, "I'm a man." Uro tries to strike at him. Nothing happens except for his hand appears to get stuck in a hole. Then it's a snare that he had set up previously. Now the dude's like flipping out. He's trying to pull himself out of the snare trap, but then he's also worried about why this kid's looking at him like he's got love on his eyes. And, and then Ichi's like, "You just tried to kill me, so now I can try to kill you. I can hunt you." And he's excited. He goes and stabs the thing. It cracks. And then something happens. Ichi gets his own drip, and I don't necessarily mind it. He could lose the cape, but I do like some of it. And now he's in an interesting situation. The Scares tells him not to move, but he's like, "Whoa, whoa! You just aimed a blade at me," and he swings this thing, and it ends up cracking whatever she put there. She said it was her barrier. Anyway, and then she starts to explain, "Don't talk, don't move. You're like in literally the worst situation. Don't say any chance." And he was like, "Wait, chance? Didn't you say something earlier?" And he repeats it, and it causes a massive, massive attack, leaving her and a bunch of people flabbergasted. Now, and then it begins to explain that only women could acquire magic because they're the only ones who have the aptitude for it. So Ichi here is kind of an anomaly. And it's widely believed that men can't use magic, but the conditions were pretty much just right because there was a magic who could only be beaten by a man and can only be acquired by a man, and the man happened to pass his trial. So that allows this man to now use magic. But they still call it a miracle. It's the end of chapter 1. Then we get into chapter 2. Another nice, not so bad cover. I like it. And begins to describe more that magic is alive and gives a little recap of what occurred. She got her little drawings. Shows a silly King Ururu going over Descara's looking brave, but then she says some random dumb kid got claimed it, and this is where we're at now. Did you get all that? And she calls him a random dumb kid. And he's like, I could argue a few of the details, but I understand. However, do you mind explaining the cage? And she's like, "Did you already forget?" And points down, and it shows that giant swath of land that he just destroyed. And then she begins to explain the magic that you acquire. Turns out it's really dangerous. Its scientific name is the Ultra Amplification Magic. The name it goes by is King Ururu. Uroro. I like to say Ururu, even though there's not that many R's. ROs, which has spent the last 1,000 years trying to acquire it and failed. But the Ultra Amplification Magic pretty much does what it says in the name. It amplifies any magic used to the maximum degree. So now this is what I was describing, that there are normal magic in the world, MAGIC, and then there are magics, MAJIK, that have their own unique properties, and in some instances it appears can even be used to interact with other magic and magics. Ururu being the really only prime example or case that we get to see of this, but we don't exactly know as far as the story goes right now. This is one of the things that I consider the most interesting. The fact that he can technically use his magic to amplify and bolster just even the basic magic. So now goes more into how everything's going around, and she's telling him that he needs to stick with her because it's going to be a lot different now, and things are people are going to want to try to get their hands on him because he's the only male witch in existence. But she's like, my problem is that I need to deal with Ururu, the person inside of you, or the magic that you have claimed, the magic inside of you. And the easiest way is for us to just stick together. And then Ururu pops up. I like saying Ururu. His name might be pronounced differently, but guys, it just feels funner saying that. He pops up and he's like, nah, man, you should run, kid. Like, absolutely should run. And don't let her fool you. She's just trying to take me, and that would be worst case. But he's like, me, I'll help you though. So let's just be partners in this. And he immediately tries to like cut him and attack him, and then he's like, huh. Hey, that startled me, and then Ururu's like, "What the heck? Who does that? Who just cuts off someone's head like that?" And then the Ichi continues forward and is like, "Man, I sensed way too much murderous intent. You shouldn't do that." And then it goes on to explain a little bit more information about how the magics work and what happens to magics if their master or claimer gets killed. So he's like, Uru is like, I'm never cooperating with the witches. And then him and Descaris start getting into a little good spat, which is part of what I like about this manga. You should read it. It has some good character interactions between the minor moments and the minor characters. And Descaris is just fun. I shouldn't even say minor, because these are two major characters, actually. But Descaris is just fun. And in her little moments, she really does have a lot of fun stuff. So it goes on. She goes on to try to entice him that, hey, there are lots of things you can hunt, and only 402 have been acquired, but there are at least 3,185 different confirmed magics. But who knows how many more unknown ones there are. And it goes on to show some various locations that we might be seeing in the future, just some weird things going on overall, and magics that need to be potentially acquired. And he is excited. He's like, "Oh yeah, now we're talking. I want to hunt. This looks fun. This looks awesome. This is what I'm going for." He agrees, so it ends up going well. And then she frees him, and he's like, "Hey, what would you mention earlier about using a revive spell on the forest?" And she tells it to him, but then she realizes that that was probably a mistake because he pops up in his outfit again, and then jumps to using the spell she just taught him while in his maximized magic, and in doing so spawns an entire giant forest apparently, and a big old massive tree. On to chapter 3. So chapter 3 is, it shows, oh, I thought I reset it. Chapter 3 goes to another scene. It shows a different mountain, and there is what appears to be a lightning looking wolf type creature or fox with multiple tails going about kind of just killing and frying things and talking about how it enjoys the smell of seared fresh and how he's been manifested, but then it explains that he is the Raiko magic. Anyway, it shows this Reiko magic just looking proud, being able to char and burn things, and hoping that some witches will come to try to claim it, so it can start getting its fame and notoriety up. But as it's talking about that and enjoying itself, it just gets a sudden feeling. Looks over, doesn't see anything, but he's looking at it like, ooh, must have imagined it. Keeps walking around, talking about its trial and discussing even what it needs to be done to acquire it and how it's going to be just really ridiculous as anybody tries to catch it each and every time. And then he finally sees someone singing, and he goes, "Ooh, a human! Finally, my first victim!" And he's real happy about it. He runs to try to attack them, and goes to pounce on them, but ends up running straight into Ichi's trap. Upon running into his trap, Ichi puts something on his face, and everything goes black for the creature. And then he's interested by the magic, uh, and eventually is like, "All right, time to butcher it." But then they're like, "Yeah, no, we don't do that." But then he begins to explain how he thought about acquiring this one, because it looks like a fox, and began to use the traits that foxes go through. So he's bringing a unique take on how to hunt these things, rather than just go about it the way that they're supposed to. And then Uro goes and explains, but this is how it's supposed to be. Like, you're supposed to introduce yourself. There's, magic that's supposed to be really strong, and then you're supposed to challenge them. And he's like, yeah, none of that. This magic was killing for fun. It wasn't hungry. Its life wasn't in danger. I care not about that. It had no problem with toying with others. It can't complain about being toyed with. And then Descaris is like, ooh, so see, he looks at magics in a just fundamentally different way. Witches tend to view magics as a monsters to be feared and respected. When we face one, we focus on its power. In this Raiko's case, that would be its lightning abilities. But Ichi is different. He observed the magic in its natural habitat for a whole day, learning its animal habits and finding out a weakness to exploit it from there. And then he's like, okay, so should I stab its heart out? Or she's like, no, 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 just cut that jewel off before it wakes up. Let's at least take its pelt. But then she's like, just cut it. He cuts it, and he turns into a stone. With that, he's acquired his second magic. And then Uros goes on to explain why he talks about how he's a little different, but he's and Descaris states it's the exception, not the rule. She then begins to check in and goes to talk to Monagold, that other witch that was showed in chapter 1. But she's like, you need to return back immediately. There is a whole lot going on, and we want you here now. So on to chapter 4. Goes back to them, and they're walking through a town. He's just kind of amazed by everything. There's so many people here. Gives a little more description on the witches that people, magic specialists who are deployed across the land to hunt magic, are called witches. Then there are witch cadets, which are witch assistants. They work in the magic research and the production of magic items, equipments. They're like learning and stuff. And then there are witch cadets juniors, which have taken the aptitude and declared to be able to use magic. They're qualified to learn magic. And then it just shows average people, or the normies, as the Scaris calls them. The average women, they have the potential, but they can barely use magic. They can use magic items, however. And then the average man, no magic power at all. They can't use magic or magic items. Goes to show all these craftsmen and looking at all this interesting stuff. Then a little comic of Descaris looking a lot more intense and JoJo-ish like than she does in her actual self. And then some interesting boots. And she begins to explain how the boots work and goes on to discuss it. She's like, "Hey man, don't let it out that you can use magic. Keep that on the hush hush." But something falls near them, and they look up and see that it was a courier who dropped a letter. Um, Before Descaris can even do anything, he takes off, and he ended up swiping the boots. But he did leave behind something. It wasn't that he just swiped the boots. He left behind his item as barter, his knife, his prized knife, and said, "Hold this as collateral." And he takes off using the boots, and you can see that this man's just got the motion to him. He's just using these things like it's easy. And he catches up to her, hands her the letter, and then Descaris catches up to them and catches her because she basically faints seeing a man upside down handing her a letter. But after that, Descaris is like, "Ugh," she's real upset, and then calls him a feral boy, and then chastises him, tells him that he needs to not be doing all that. You're not supposed to be showing the magic right now, especially that you, a male, can use magic essentially. But he's like, hey, just magic is fun. And then they go on to talk a little bit more, and apparently they crash land into the Witches Association, or crash through the gate at least. And Descaris is like, I'm home. And you can tell she was the troublemaker of her generation just off this, right? But then it goes to the next one. The next chapter. So shows her entering, going in through a mirror, and apparently the mirror teleports. Have to be granted permission and registered. And he is just amazed. It shows this grand looking building, awesome architecture, ornate looking stuff, until a foot comes up out of the floor and starts approaching him. He is baffled. But then you get to see my personal favorite witch, the unique oddity. She pops up and she is just examining him. No room for his boundaries whatsoever. Looking at him, touching him, asking to see him naked. It's a whole little thing. Finally, one of her little underlings ask for some of his hair and throws it to her, and she chases after it kind of like a cat, which is definitely, again, the characters and their personalities are fairly interesting. But then when you find out she is the analytic witch, which makes a little more sense. She is curious, studying, wants to know everything. And since Ichi is like a rare anomaly, of course she wants to analyze them. Then it goes to that, and they register his magics, and he is sensing something in the mirror up above. They ask him to demonstrate that he really can use magic, and he does, but he uses it at the mirror on the roof. Notices that nothing happened to it, but then realizes that he uses magic rather uniquely. But then she begins to ask him why'd why'd he miss the target and why'd he aim for the roof, and points out that he aimed for it. And she's like, but then he goes into stating that it's a habit. And he says, when I sense powerful presence, especially a hostile one, my body just kind of reacts. That's no normal ceiling. What's beyond that mirror? And then she's like, ooh, wow, you can sense that? And then goes on to say that the witches of the association are all watching him, and we get to see all these different looking witches. Then she goes on to state that they wanted to see and watch you. They were judging you to see if you're dangerous or not. You've proved that you're capable of using magic without hesitation. Will they see that as a weapon or as a potential threat? Or a weapon in their arsenal or as a potential threat? And then goes forward a little bit more. But then it goes, she says that he should do something about that because it's Uru popping out and kind of manifesting even strongly. And then he goes out to say, how about we do a little witch hunting instead? And that is the end of chapter 5. Now, honestly, I think it's well done. The first 5 chapters are an interesting introduction, and they get to lead you into the story slash what is to come. Personally, I think this manga gets really fun, and I think it's going to continue getting really fun. So I think more people should kind of check it out, give it a chance, read it, talk about it. I'm gonna try to figure out how I want to do these and how I want to slice and section these and interact with this more. I think maybe the 5 chapters at a time is fun, but I don't quite know. I'm gonna have to learn, maybe get better about it. I do also want to do 5 chapters for other mangas, completed ones, non-completed ones, and really see how that goes out as well. But as of right now, this will have to be the first. So thank you for coming to check it out. If you made it this far, maybe consider leaving a like, subscribe, maybe even a comment to tell me what your thoughts on about it are. Do you like Ichi the Witch? Are you all caught up? Do you enjoy reading it? What are some other mangas I should check out since I like this one? You know, things of that nature. Just discussion, 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 because I'm interested. I think the first five chapters set it up wonderfully. We got to see the world. We got to learn a lot about some of the witches. We got to learn and see some witches, but not actually learn who they are. So that creates more intrigue. We got to learn about their power system through two of their spells and two of their magics. Very interesting. I hope you guys think so as well. Anyway, this is a random reader. I'll be signing off. I hope you guys hydrate or dihydrate.